Someone is lying. Chapter 1. The message that wasn't meant for me. The message came in at 1:12 a.m. She wasn't expecting anything. That's what made it impossible to ignore. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand. Short. Intentional. When she glanced at the screen, the name wasn't familiar. And that was the first warning. Just one sentence appeared in the preview. Did she see it yet? Her body reacted before her thoughts did. A tightening in her chest. A sudden awareness of the room around her. She told herself it was nothing. Wrong number. A late-night mistake. But something about the phrasing unsettled her. She. As if the sender already knew who she was. She unlocked the phone. The message wasn't alone. There was a full thread. Messages stacked back weeks, times, dates, gaps. None of it made sense, until it started to. She's closer than you think. Don't rush. She notices patterns. Her breathing slowed. Not panic, focus. She had never spoken to this number, never saved it. And yet the conversation spoke as if she were present in it. As if she had always been part of it. Just without knowing. She scrolled carefully, committing each line to memory. There were no names, no explanations, only planning. That was the part that frightened her most. This wasn't emotional. It wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. She locked the phone and set it down exactly where it had been. Then she sat very still. She lived alone. No one else in the apartment. No one else to hear the silence settle. Every sound suddenly mattered. The hum of the refrigerator. The faint traffic outside. Her own breathing. She replayed the last few weeks in her mind. The feeling of being watched, dismissed. The sense of repetition, ignored. The moments where things felt slightly off, but never enough to question. She realized then what the message truly meant. Did she see it yet? They weren't wondering if she'd received something. They were monitoring her awareness, and that meant one thing. Someone had been observing her long before tonight. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone in her hand, pulse steady but sharp. This wasn't about fear. Fear makes you visible. This was about control. And control belongs to the person who understands the game before the other players realize they're in it. She didn't delete the message. Didn't respond. She turned the phone face down. If someone was watching her, she would let them believe she still didn't see a thing. Because the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone thinks is unaware. Someone is lying. Chapter 2. Dismissing the signs. After that night, she stopped calling things coincidences. Not because she had proof, but because proof is rarely the first thing you get. The first thing you get is repetition. The same car parked across the street 3 mornings in a row. The same footsteps behind her that always seemed to slow when she slowed. The way her phone battery drained faster on days she didn't leave the apartment. Individually, none of it meant anything. Together, it formed a pattern, and patterns are where the truth hides. She stopped reacting. That was important. People notice reactions, they adjust to them. Instead, she changed her behavior in small, untraceable ways. She left the apartment at different times, took longer routes home, and paused before entering buildings just to see who paused too. She kept her face neutral, her pace steady. She let the world think she was still unaware. At night, she replayed the messages. Not the words, the tone. Whoever sent them wasn't anxious, they weren't improvising. They were checking progress. That meant there was a goal, and goals require timelines. She searched the number. Nothing. No name, no profile, no digital footprint she could reach. That bothered her more than if she'd found something. Erasure is intentional. She thought about all the moments she'd dismissed over the past few months. The stranger who'd used her name without being introduced. The delivery she never ordered but was addressed correctly. The email that referenced a conversation she'd never had. At the time, she'd assumed mistakes. Now she understood the mistake had been hers. She had assumed she was invisible. One evening, she tested something. She left her phone at home, not powered off, just present. Then she went for a walk. Halfway down the block, the feeling returned. That subtle pressure between the shoulders. That awareness of being aligned with someone else's attention. She turned suddenly. No one stood too close, no obvious threat. But the car was there again. Same position, same angle. She memorized it. Not the plate. The distance. Because distance reveals intention. When she returned home, her phone buzzed. A new message, same number. Noticed the change. Her fingers went cold. They weren't guessing anymore. They were confirming. She didn't respond. Instead, she sat down and wrote everything out. Times, places, details. She realized something terrifying as the list grew. This wasn't random surveillance. This was study. They weren't watching her life. They were learning how she moved through it. Which meant she wasn't the observer anymore. She was the subject. And the worst part? She didn't know what they wanted her for. Yet. She looked around her apartment. The familiar now feeling staged. Every object suddenly felt like evidence, or camouflage. She understood something then, with chilling clarity. Whatever this was, it wasn't escalating. It was progressing. And if she wanted to survive it, not escape it but outthink it, she would have to stop asking why. Why is a distraction? The real question was simpler. What happens when they decide she's seen enough? Someone is lying, Chapter 3. They know when I'm lying. The first time she lied on purpose, nothing happened. That was the mistake. She told a coworker she was going out of town for the weekend, said it casually, loud enough to be overheard. She didn't pack, didn't leave. She just stayed home and waited. Saturday morning passed quietly. No messages, no movement outside. She almost relaxed, almost believed she'd imagined the whole thing. Then her phone buzzed. Enjoy the trip. No question mark, no uncertainty, just confirmation. Her pulse didn't spike, it steadied. Because fear belongs to the unprepared, and she was past that now. They weren't tracking her location. They were tracking her narrative, what she said, what she implied, what version of herself she presented to the world. That meant someone was listening where she hadn't thought to look. She replayed her week carefully. The cafe she visited every morning, the same table, the same outlet she plugged into. She changed it the next day. Different cafe, different block. Her phone buzzed before she even sat down. You don't like the corner table? She smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was revealing. They wanted her unsettled. Reaction was the reward. So she stopped giving it to them. Instead, she started feeding them information. Small lies, controlled ones. She mentioned a date that didn't exist, a meeting that never happened, a schedule that shifted constantly. And she watched. The messages adjusted, corrected her, redirected her. That's when she understood. They weren't just watching. They were curating, steering her gently, invisibly, towards something she couldn't yet see. She began writing everything down, not digitally, never digitally, but by hand. Ink doesn't report back. She noticed something chilling. Every time she resisted a suggestion, something in her life became harder. Missed deliveries, canceled appointments, locked accounts. Nothing catastrophic, just enough friction to make resistance inconvenient. Compliance, on the other hand, was rewarded. Smooth days, quiet nights, silence. They were conditioning her, not with threats, with comfort. That was the most dangerous part. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror that night, studying her reflection. She looked the same, but she wasn't. She had become someone who measured words before speaking, someone who performed normalcy, someone who understood that privacy was no longer a given. It was a tactic. She whispered something aloud. I know you're listening. The phone buzzed almost immediately. We know. No denial, no warning, just acknowledgement. She laughed quietly, a sound she didn't recognize, because now the game had changed. They knew she was aware, and she knew something else too. Whatever they wanted from her, they needed her lucid, and that meant she still had leverage. For now. Someone is lying. Chapter 4. What they've been preparing me for. The invitation arrived without warning. No vibration, no sound, just a calendar notification that hadn't been there before. She stared at the screen, her pulse steady, her jaw tight. Tonight. 9 p.m. A location was attached. She hadn't accepted anything. She hadn't agreed. That was the point. She checked her email. Nothing. Messages. Nothing. Only the event, already confirmed. She didn't delete it. Deletion is resistance, and resistance creates pressure. Instead, she studied it. The location was familiar, too familiar. A building she passed every day on her way home. An old office space, long empty, according to public records. She knew that because she'd checked weeks ago, before she knew she was being studied. Her phone buzzed. One message. You're ready. Not come, not now, not please. A statement. She didn't respond. She stood up and walked through her apartment slowly, noticing things she'd stopped seeing. The angle of her windows, the blind spot in the hallway mirror, the way her doorframe carried marks she hadn't made. Preparation doesn't begin when someone tells you to move. It begins when they've already learned how you hesitate. She changed her clothes, deliberately ordinary. No bag, no phone charger. She left the phone behind. If they wanted her present, not traceable, she would give them one of the two. Outside, the air felt staged. Too quiet, too neutral. The walk took exactly 7 minutes. She knew, because she'd timed it before. The building looked smaller up close. Unremarkable. That was intentional. Nothing dangerous ever looks like it belongs to a threat. Inside, the lights were on. One room, one chair, one camera. She stopped at the threshold. Not from fear, from calculation. This was not an interrogation. There was no two-way glass, no armed presence. This wasn't about extracting information, it was about alignment. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A phone she had not brought. Her stomach dropped. She reached in slowly. It was hers. Warm. Active. One new message. You don't get to decide when you disconnect. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her without a sound. A voice came through the speaker, calm, unhurried. You've been selected because you notice what others ignore. She didn't speak. Silence is power when you don't know the rules yet. We're not interested in obedience, the voice continued. We're interested in capability. The camera light turned red. Recording, archiving, preparing. You weren't followed, the voice said. You were mapped. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened glass. She understood then. This was never about watching her life, it was about testing her limits. And tonight wasn't the end of the observation. It was the beginning of her function. Someone is lying. Chapter 5. What happens if I say no? She didn't answer right away. Not because she was afraid, but because she needed to understand the cost of speaking. The silence stretched between them. It wasn't awkward. It was measured. The kind of pause that exists to see who breaks first. If I say no, she asked finally, what happens? The voice didn't respond immediately. That was deliberate. People reveal more when they think they've asked the wrong question. When the voice returned, it sounded completely unchanged. You already know the answer. And she did. No meant resistance. Resistance meant pressure. Pressure meant isolation disguised as consequence, not punishment. Correction. She thought about the way her life had narrowed so quietly over the past few weeks. The missed calls, the subtle obstacles, the invisible hands adjusting outcomes just enough to steer her back. They didn't need force. They had infrastructure. I'm not useful to you if I'm coerced, she said. It was true, and she knew they valued truth above all else. You're useful because you adapt, the voice replied smoothly. Because you notice. Because you survive awareness without unraveling. She looked directly at the camera, at the steady red light that didn't blink. They hadn't brought her here to convince her. They'd brought her here to measure her response. Compliance wasn't the goal. Calibration was. What happens if I walk out? She asked. Another pause. Then we let you, the voice said, and we watch how long it takes before you realize you were safer inside the system than outside it. That was the threat. Not harm, exposure. The realization hit her slowly, then all at once. This wasn't recruitment, it was inevitability. They didn't select people to control them. They selected people who could no longer unknow what they'd already seen. She stood. No alarms sounded. No voices were raised. The door clicked, unlocked. Choice, presented so cleanly, is the most persuasive weapon there is. She walked out. The night air felt unchanged. The street looked normal, but nothing was unobserved anymore. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A final message. This isn't a test you pass or fail. It's a role you eventually accept. She didn't delete it. She didn't respond. She just walked home knowing something irreversible had happened. She wasn't being watched anymore. She was being waited on. Because systems like this don't chase. They let you live just long enough to realize you were never outside them at all. I hope you enjoyed this one. Previous chapters are available on my page. Join us on Monday where this story continues with part 2. They don't watch me anymore. Please follow or subscribe so you don't miss it.